The ModernJeeper Show, the show about Jeeps, Jeeping, and Jeepers.
Well, hey, Modern Jeepers, is another episode of the ModernJeeper Show with me, Matson from Metalcloak, and Mr. Modern Jeeper, Corey Osborne.
Hey, buddy.
Hey, and Rockstar Jeep girl, Jessy. How you doing, girl?
How's it going?
I'm good. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
You know, we've got,
Happy New Year.
we're going to roll right into it. Usually we kind of like go over a little bit of stuff that we've been doing, but as everybody can see who's watching this, and if you're not watching this at youtube.com/ModernJeeper, well, then you should be watching this at youtube.com/ModernJeeper, or you need to subscribe, please, and say like and all that other good stuff. But we have our guests here, and with us are a number of great people, all of you which our ModernJeeper fans are familiar with because they've been on our show before. And this is part of that annual roundtable we do to talk about previous years and upcoming years and just generally BS with our friends about Jeeps. And Corey, do you want to just jump in and introduce our guys?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think this is the first time we've actually had a total of 6 participants. So we have 4 guests, and then with Matson and Jessy and I. But you know, we've had each of these guys on before. 3 of them have been part of the roundtable before, and actually, Mr. John Herrick from Crawl Magazine, we've had him on the show before. But I looked back in March 2020, we had John on the show to talk about COVID and its effects and where we thought things were going to go. And of course, March of 2020 was we had no clue what we were in store for.
We were flattening the curve for 2 weeks.
Yeah. We were just taking guesses at where things would end up. So it's great to have Mr. John Herrick with us from Crawl Magazine. We've got Mr. Larry McCrae, which our listeners and followers know. A lot of people in the industry know Larry from. Well, he was Mr. Poison Spyder back in the day. Entrepreneur, Zion Jeep Tours, racer. Just an industry icon again. And great to have Larry with us.
Nice to be here.
We got Mr. Rick Pewe, the Jeep guy. Rick's been. It's kind of fun for me because I've known all these guys for like 10 plus years, and to get them all in one spot and talk to them and see them all, my brain, like all of those questions, I'm like, oh geez, I should make sure we get to that. But I have notes here, so yeah. Rick's been doing a lot of things, and recently, 2 years-ish, it's been, I guess, he started Gone-Gpn with some other industry folks, and it's great to have Rick with us. And we've got Mr. Andrew Hoit, Vice President, Milestar Tires, great friend, good industry guy, has his hand on a lot of things, and some feelings of after we've come out of 2020 and 2021, now we can look forward to 2022. So welcome all you guys.
Yeah,
Good
welcome.
Good to be here.
And like I said, Happy New Year to all of you too. I mean, it's 2021 is done, behind us in the books. For some of us, it probably was pretty, for all of us, I imagine it was pretty crazy. I know for us at Metalcloak, it was definitely a game-changing year, and I don't use that word lightly, but it changed us as a company and made us a better organization, and we had to grow and handle the growth. Being one of the few companies in the industry on our product lines that actually had stuff available, we were, and get some early investments on supply chains and stuff, making sure that we had it. We had a much greater demand, so our growth was incredible. That number of people we had to bring on board and just making everything better. So I think for us, 2021 was a year of change, development, and growth. And I'm sure for all of you, it was very similar. That being said, Corey, you went through. We both listened to the last episode, got some better ideas. Kind of putting these people on notice as to some of the predictions they made last year. Well, let's first, before we get into predictions about this next year, let's talk about what 2021 was for you, and what you experienced. So, like Pewe, so for you, it was obviously, is that the second year of your new business of Gone-Gpn?
Right. This was second year. The first year was, of course, after myself and my compadres were separated from the other previous companies, and we said, well, what are we going to do? How about something for fun? So Tracy Clark came up with Gone-Gpn, and we all jumped on board. And the whole idea is for fun. Our biggest problem, of course, was next thing you know, here's COVID, and all the events shut down. So it's really kind of hard to have a social media presence covering events when there are no events. Excuse me. That's not a COVID cough. Although somebody might be. And if so, it's the one past Omicron. It's the French one that I haven't talked about yet. So I think we'll go from there. So yeah, the challenges are many, of course, when you build yourself somebody that's going to tell everybody about events, and then there aren't any. Well, that's why this year I'm going to be doing some of my own events. We'll do some Gone-Gpn events. I'll cover stuff where I just feel like going out on a trail ride. I'll stick the camera there. We just go, just have fun. So one thing you said about predictions the past couple of roundtables, I have no idea what I predicted. Maybe you can help. Let us
We
know.
do.
I've got really good notes here.
I can't wait to hear.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
and
what I'm waiting
maybe
for too, to see.
maybe let
That'll be
me
the
set
best.
the stage a little bit first, and as we start to talk about this, I think this will give us kind of a path for us to follow, and we can talk about not only where we've come from this past year, but where we're going looking forward. One of the things that we talked about at the beginning we recorded the last roundtable. It was the very end of December of 2020, and one of the things that we all pretty much said was that the pandemic was going to be good for our industry, and I found that very interesting. There's been a lot of industries that have benefited from this type of what we've had to endure, I guess. But like Rick was saying, the events get canceled, things change. It also became a year for us to just be the expectations, I guess. It was managing expectations and realizing that we have to be flexible, and we can't just assume that things are going to be happening when they're scheduled to happen. So everybody's predictions were pretty much spot on. Everybody said that, yeah, 2021 is going to be a year of kind of the same of what we saw the end of 2020 looking like, but everybody was busy. It all came down to really supply chain issues, which Andrew brought up a lot. Larry talked about the domestic traveler and not so much international traffic, doing what he does with the Jeep tour side of things. And Rick touched on events. Now, John, when we were initially talking about this in March, we were all kind of like, yeah, we're going to hunker down and we're just going to have to see what happens. But I think this entire group, and I think the industry as a whole, has been so flexible and so good at going, well, that didn't work out, so we're just going to do something different. And knowing that we all have to evolve like that, I think this has been an evolution type of year.
Absolutely.
And I think also the difference between 2020 and 2021 are radically different. For 2020, yeah, is more of a sit back, let's reassess everything, see which way things are going to go. And then 2021, it's like, all right, then let's do it. It's like, what did Jeep do with introducing new models? They just bam, 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 one after another. Will that be that way in 2022? Well, that's going to be different because they'll have new owners, Stellantis.
I hope not. Having a hard time keeping up with new platforms.
Exactly.
Andrew's got it easy. Just making a tire, just a few different tires, fits all the platforms, man.
Yeah,
like
just
a new skid plate. Yeah. Let's add another skid plate. Oh, Jeep decided the 2021 was different than the 2020. Thanks. Man, be thankful you're not in the business anymore, Larry.
I am almost daily.
Right.
Well, that was one thing that I found, that being officially retired after 25 years in the magazine industry, I'm busier than I ever was. I have more projects and more things going on, and I don't know how that happens, but everybody else that I talked to that actually did retire, are the same way. Hardly anybody I know just said, okay, I'm just going to go read a book, sit on the couch, and die. Not at all.
Right.
All I'm doing things just like everybody else in our industry. It doesn't matter if you're retired or what you're doing. Just keep going.
There's
Well,
really
I
no
think
such
it's
thing as retirement.
I think it's very interesting, and Andrew brought up that because of things like the National Park Service and permitting issues, and so these events can't take place just because of what the political arena is doing to us all. And he stated last year that we probably wouldn't see a lot of large scale events, and they were focused on bringing those club style events back into popularity, and those I think really did play out all year long. The smaller events are more popular. You get to talk to people directly. Rick mentioned 2 years ago, having an event with 100 rigs, those events just aren't that much fun. With John doing the Crawl the Con stuff, very small group of folks going out and wheeling together, and even Larry with doing his tours, it becomes a very personal thing. And I think that's what the evolution has been, and I think that's where it's going to continue going.
So, Andrew, with what what he was just talking about, one of the biggest things that came up is supply chain issues, and we saw that a lot in 2021. Right? We're getting a feeling right now at our end that that's actually starting to clear up, and either one, because prices are starting to come back down. We're seeing on sheet metal prices come down, and it might actually within the next few months be flattening back out to not necessarily where it was in early 2020 or even in 2020, but where it should be. How about you? I mean, that was the biggest concern you saw heading into 2021.
So yeah, and it's still our single biggest challenge. And I don't know, you probably don't follow any of the tire industry news, but it has seen unprecedented price increases across the board. I mean, we just announced our 5th price increase in 18 months, which is unheard of. And all of it's being driven by transportation. I think from the volume of ocean freight, we're seeing more slight uptick, but it's still a far cry from what it was or should be. And everything that we're seeing says that that's not going to change until the very end of 2022. We bring a lot of stuff overseas, and we have contract rates, but then we have spot rates. So you can't get your contract rates never fully cover 100% of your volume. And the spot rates are still staying in the $15,000 a container neighborhood.
Wow. Yeah, it's incredible.
Which
That's
is
gone up
nuts.
from like $2,000 a container. We one of our new guys that joined us, so Mike Upchurch, with he's head of the ARS brand, the Adventure Rack Systems brand, and he was with Camprite for a little while. And that was what the challenge they were saying is from $2,000 a container to $20,000 a container now, just to be able to get them in. And that's just the container fee.
Right.
And what are you going to do with that? You're going to pass it on. Right. That's something we want to talk about a little bit later about, when we start talking about 2022 predictions as well, is like, where do you see inflationary pressures going? I mean, but this is actually a question for you, Larry, because from a pure, you have dealing directly with discretionary income. People coming, and it's not a matter of necessity of tires or necessity of suspension systems. Your discretionary income is people wanting to come in and have fun with you. Do you see inflationary pressures and the costs of food and other stuff going up, limiting your business, or do you think you're immune to that?
Definitely potential. I like, just to keep good labor, our labor costs have gone up and will be much higher in 2022. Of course, fuel prices have gone up, and insurance prices have never come down. So those are our 3 big ones, and they're all going up. So we've had to increase our prices this year, or for 2022. And we have to make that decision way in advance, because most travel agents are booking, especially if it's international travel, they're booking for the next summer. So we've already had to make all those decisions and hope we made the right ones, knowing that the dollar isn't going to go as far, and knowing that people may not be able to afford luxuries as a Jeep tour while they're out traveling. Then they have to, they have to hike. Then they have to stay in a tent instead of a hotel. And so it definitely concerns us this year that could be an issue, especially since we've had to raise our prices. It could be compounded, but there's not much.
Yeah, you have to do it.
Right, you have to do it.
How much of your business is international?
It was, I would say, the summer we bought it, and the first summer before COVID was probably 50% international.
Wow.
And when that went away, I thought, we're done. We can't survive on 50% of the business. And of course, 2020 was full of domestic travelers, and 2021 also was full of domestic travelers, with maybe a handful of international travelers. And I think that when international travels open back up, which I don't know when that's going to happen. I went to Mexico in the middle of COVID, to Cabo, and had no problems getting back. Coming back from the Baja 1000, there was at least 2 hours of additional paperwork and ordeal we had to go through to get out of the country. Thankfully, we got to the airport.
You went to the wrong border. You just needed to go down to Texas, and you could have got just driven right over.
While we're in Baja, I got a horrible sore throat, a cough. I mean, every COVID symptom you can think of, I got. And I thought, crap, I'm not going to be able to leave here for 2 weeks. And so I got tested, and I tested negative. And I thought, okay, great. That was when we were in Ensenada, but we had to go all the way back down, of course, this is, after the pre-run, we came back to Ensenada. I had to go all the way back down to La Paz. And I thought, well, my only option from there is to fly home. And if I have symptoms, you're not supposed to fly. If you've tested positive, you can't fly. And all the paperwork I had to fill out as I was coughing and hacking and sneezing at the airport said that I hadn't coughed, hacked, or sneezed.
That you're fine.
No.
So, but I knew I was negative. I had 2 tests before I came home, but so I knew I was negative. But I don't see international travel being a big part of our business again this year. We're going to have to rely on domestic, and I think a lot of people that were going to do their car trips have already done it. So I predict for us potentially a little dip. We've had 2 record years, so I wish we could continue this, but I foresee a little dip coming for us this summer.
And John,
what do you think? Yeah,
go ahead, Corey.
I was just, from an advertiser perspective, and from the people that your readership levels and that kind of thing. What do you feel?
Are your advertisers stressed for the dollars? Are they stressed in spending money, or not?
Okay, say that again, Matson.
Are your advertisers stressed about spending money with you, or
no.
is it just no? So the flow is fine.
No, as a matter of fact, I'm getting more inquiries now, and I think it's because the supply chain issues are starting to break up, and because it's been as the guys in the manufacturing side know, as you know, Matson, you either have product to sell or you don't. And so you either have it tied up somewhere and you can't make it, or you've sold out because you're having a banner year. And that's been the problem for probably the last 18 months or so. But I started to notice a breakup a little while ago, and people are reaching out pre-SEMA. We're saying, we think 2022 is going to be a better year for product availability and being able to keep stock levels high enough that we can continue to sell and not have to sell into back order. And that's when people started talking about advertising. I did have a few that questioned whether or not they should continue advertising since they had nothing to sell. But the argument there is, well, you got to keep brand awareness, because at some point you will have something to sell and people have to remember that you exist. I have run into an awful lot of just readers that say, I'm not going to buy an inferior brand or product because the first choice isn't available. I'll wait. And that's been kind of unique to hear, because most people that are in our industry love to spend money as soon as they got it in their wallet. So having them hang on and buy the preferred brand over anything else that's available is a little bit out of character.
Now, in those industry guys you talk to, since you're probably amongst all of us the one who's most in touch with manufacturers and other industry and retailers and stuff in general, what is the general sense that they see for 2022 out the future? Do they feel like, oh, Larry, a little puppy, that's so cute. What's the general sense? What do they think about the inflation that's going on, how it's affecting their business? Are they just happy they have supply and they're going to fulfill orders that have been waiting, or are they concerned at all about where 2022 is going to take the business?
Nobody has expressed any significant concern about what's in store this year. It's all been positive outlook. I haven't, a couple of major importing companies that I can think of are just mainly concerned about getting stuff off the boats and into their warehouses, but they're also looking at different ways of sourcing product. So, whether it's domestic or whether it's from new suppliers that may be offshore, they're just finding new ways of doing things because they know that the hunger is there for the product, and it doesn't seem to be slowing at all. I mean, just talking with people out and about, everybody's building a rig, it seems like. Everybody has got some kind of project going on. Nobody has slowed down on the consumer side of it. So I just don't see any corresponding slowdown on the manufacturing retailing side. They'll figure out a way. I mean, American retailers always figure out how they're going to make a sale. At the end of the day, that is their business, so they'll figure it out.
Well, I know from our standpoint, we hear it all the time from companies that are in or from customers of companies that are in our categories that, had an order on, it's been for 3 months, waiting to get it, 4 months, finally canceling the order. But I'm actually excited when I hear the opposite. I'm excited when I hear that the other companies are actually getting their inventory in or meeting their customers' needs, because again, it's good for all of us when more and more people are out there able to do it, when the industry grows, when companies grow, and more people can get out on the trail, because just waiting for a product or getting an inferior product, to your point, just doesn't work, right?
No.
So Andrew, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say something along the same lines that John mentioned. We've done a combination of a lot of those. The manufacturing side of our business is not where the bottleneck is. It's all through the supply chain. I mean, we've got 3 months worth of inventory floating off the coast of California. So what we've done is both twofold what John mentioned. One, we've started sourcing domestically. So we launched our first domestically built tire line earlier in 2021. And then two, we've got our warehouse in California is 1.1 million square feet, but it forces us to bring the majority of product in through the port of LA Long Beach, which is where the biggest bottleneck is in the country. So we're in the process of opening a large DC on the East Coast so that we can divert some of the flow through the port of Savannah and some through LA Long Beach to try and alleviate that bottleneck.
Well, that's a smart way of doing it, especially if you got, although on the East Coast, how would you do? Would the ships come across the Pacific and then go through Panama to get over there, or
they'll go through Panama? Yeah.
So what's the cost difference for you to have it go?
It's significant. I mean, but if costs normalize some, it won't be so bad.
It's probably not $20,000 container.
Well, those container fees are coming straight out of China, and I mean that's what they're charging, $20,000 just to get a container out of that area.
Well, we can go back to the contract rates and get lower contract rates, less spot buy through opening up another path. Yeah.
And I've heard of guys going through and trying to use Washington, but Washington's pretty backed up. But trying to get over to New York, and then down to Florida. Florida's opening up, so I'm glad you're using Georgia. That's very smart. So, Pewe, and what you're doing this year, and just in general with the Jeep world, because I think you're still very, very connected to the world of Jeep. You're connected by the flip flops. where are you seeing, and Corey has some numbers on actual sales for 2021, which for all of Stellantis, I guess it's all of Stellantis, it was down 1% in the US.
Yeah, so FCA is reported. They just released their fourth quarter and the full 2021 sales results, and they say that retail sales for FCA were pretty much flat over last year. But it's interesting. I mean, there's definitely, and Rick knows this. I mean, the demand is still extremely strong. Sales of individual brands like the Gladiator and the Wrangler. The Gladiator sales were up 16% this last year.
Yeah.
And I think they reported Wrangler being up 2 or 3%. You know, there's a lot of other brands under the FCA umbrella, but I think that the consensus is that, you know, the chip shortage, yeah, supply chain issues, but like John mentioned, the demand is so strong, people are willing to wait for whatever they're looking for. I mean, I read some crazy report about, you know, hashtag van life and how the sales of the ProMaster van and stuff had gone through the roof because that's what they want to do.
And that's one thing about the Jeep line. Of course, just looking at the Jeep slice out of Stellantis, it eliminates a lot of that stuff that as off-roaders none of us care about, except of course some of those vans, which then end up doing the overlanding stuff, which, as we all know, is just a huge market right there that helps drive a lot of stuff. But if you look at the individual Jeeps like the Gladiator and the Wrangler, of course they're doing fine. It's, you know, record-breaking type of stuff, and you have to expect that. Will the Bronco ever catch up? Well, I don't drive one, so I have no idea.
Well, and what do you see as far as, and this is just a great question. For instance, I'm going to throw a question at you, Larry. So did you add to your fleet in 2021?
No, I don't think we did. We bought a Gladiator at the end of 2021, but
The gray Jeep?
that was a 2020. Yeah, we didn't add to our fleet this year, mostly because of pricing.
Are you going to add to your fleet in 2022?
Possibly. We've got a couple that are about ready to cycle out. The pricing is so high and the availability is so low that I thought it's not a really good time to buy a new Jeep. The one I found at the end of 2020 was just a fluke, and I don't think I could do that again. There was almost $20,000 more for this, almost the same Jeep that a friend of mine bought a few months after that, and I thought, well, I just can't justify it yet. We'll make these last maybe a little bit longer. But I'm sure before the end of this year, we'll have to add a Jeep or two.
And for you, like for Andrew, obviously tires, people have to go through tires. Do you focus at all on the new Jeep purchase versus the guy who's simply upgrading and the guy who's simply cycling through because his old tires wore out?
We see it more so because you just look at the size, and obviously the enthusiast segment is a very small sampling of sizes. So you can probably count it probably close to one hand, the number of sizes that the enthusiasts purchase. And then you look at more just for the tires that wear out, you're going to look at more OE replacement sizing. And it's really, really hard to differentiate it because a lot of folks in the value segment, if you'll say that, were just completely out of business for a lot of 2021 because they had no supply. We were somewhat in the catbird seat because we had the supply. So we were obviously growing. Sales year over year were up quite a bit. So it's really hard to differentiate what we got because somebody else was out of stock or what we got because somebody wore out tires. But the other thing I would mention on that, from my perspective on the FCA sales, is it could be if it's year over year revenue increase versus car unit increases. I would guess the units are down, but the revenue is up because of the pricing that Larry mentioned. So you can't get a discount on a new car anymore. That's impossible. Everything's MSRP or worse, MSRP plus. So revenue's surely up, but I would still guess that units are down.
Yeah, and even at our end, we had to do some price increases this year, and thankfully our customers can accept that, and we put it off as long as we could. But with sheet going from, like I said, I think it was 47 cents just a couple of years ago to $1.80 at its peak,
Wow.
just a couple months ago. And that's we use a skid plate system with 7-gauge sheet and 1/4-inch sheet on it, right? And that's per pound cost going up, increasing amazingly well. And our customers have accepted it, but you still struggle with that. Now you have the brand recognized customers, the customers that are coming to you because they know the brand and they're willing to accept that price increase because they know the brand, versus the acquisition of new customers who are simply looking for something, and now they're doing price comparison because they don't necessarily know the brand. So we struggled that with a little bit, but we're hoping, and as we see into this next year with supply chains and the dollars, the price of steel actually, the sheet actually going down. Whose dog is that?
That's Maisie Corn Muffin here at Crawl headquarters.
Nice.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. There's podcasts. Our fans know that sometimes there's a lot of dogs in the background, especially if I'm doing this from home. But seeing that sheet price go down, I think we just recently got an order in for it at $1. So as we do that and we were able to get that through and get that in, it'll probably improve our situation and for the customers. But again, that challenge of dollars going up, sales and quantity and units going down, possibly. What do we see again? Back to Rick. With sales and the people and the contacts you have within Jeep and the world that you live in, do you see great prospects for 2022? Do you see people? Do you think the sales are going to go up? Where do you see 2022 being?
Oh, I definitely think sales are going to go up, and I would say most of the people I've talked to are obviously positive. No one wants to be a negative Nancy, but prices are going to increase due to cost. Simple as that. I don't think the volume is going to go down that much, because think about Andrew. You're ordering more and more tires. You're not ordering less. You just want them. The same way with the vehicles. They're going to be selling, as I believe, especially Wranglers and the they're going to sell everyone that they can. Simple as that.
Yeah.
If they can make them, if they have the chips, they will do it. Simple as that. That's not
that's the challenge of the dealerships, right?
Waiting for chips.
Right.
Do you hear me there?
Yeah. So with that supply chain, though, we see that as well in some of the companies in the industry, right? Everybody wants a sale when they can get the sale. There's a shop right down the street from us. It's a Ford fleet dealership. Corey saw us when he came and visited, but they're just a mechanic shop. They work on Ford fleet vehicles. They have been taking in vehicles for months and months, but they can't get the parts to repair them. So if you drive by Metalcloak, the entire road, Mercantile Drive, up and down, is lined with Ford fleet vehicles, ambulances, work trucks,
waiting for parts. Sure,
waiting for parts. Right? They're taking the orders in, and you see that as well. Everybody wants the money. Everybody needs the orders, so they're taking the orders in. But then it starts building up this big backlog. Now, what happens? The chance to solve a backlogs do not get solved overnight, just like we see out there in the Port of Long Beach, right? Oh, gee, there's now 200 ships. We knew a year ago there was 40 ships, and now there's 200 ships. We're going to try to solve it. So what do we, what's the challenge like for you, John, when some of the guys you're talking about that have those kind of backlogs out there, have they talked at all about how they tackle that, or they just just buckle down and get through it?
It seems that most of them have approached it, like I mentioned earlier, just finding a new stream, a new source. And otherwise, just taking the hits. For those guys that didn't plan well enough, perhaps in early 2020, to foresee what we're all looking at in hindsight, 2 years later, that most of them that have done well were able to kind of see what was going to happen, and they fortified their relationships with their offshore partners, and they started looking for onshore sources, and that's where they went. But going back to, especially with Andrew's issues with stuff coming from offshore, one of the things that's come up is whether or not the way we run our ports versus the way it's done in the rest of the world keeps coming up in my mind. Is there room for this to be, and I know Matson and Corey will have trouble with this. Is there room for this to be nationalized so that it's all run inefficiently but consistently inefficiently, as opposed to what we're dealing with now with disparate groups of shippers and railroads and dockside people, and it seems an awful lot of the trouble is if you do get the container off the ship, then you get the container moved inland through some of the most expensive property in the United States on the coast. Then you got to, park it in Nebraska for 3 months before it can go to the guy in Chicago that needs to unload it so he can turn around and sell the stuff.
Well,
Is there a way to find more efficient ways of doing this, perhaps without so many people with their fingers in the pie?
Well, I'd say we first have to have a transportation secretary who doesn't take 3 months off in the middle of the thing to go home and spend time with his adopted son. I appreciate that, and I appreciate the fact that he's a father, but he's a transportation secretary of the United States in the middle of a transportation crisis. Excuse me, I'll get off my soapbox for a second. But if you take that down the path of, but nationalization, here's a challenge. I mean, there's a great book, and I've talked about it on this podcast before, and anybody really want to understand the shipping industry and the way it's evolved, read the book's called The Box. It's a very thick book, but it's called The Box, and it is strictly a tome about the history of the shipping container and the challenges in this. And what we're seeing now is an evolution that occurred from look at the way it was in the 1800s to get shipments in, and then into the 1900s. There was a constant evolution. But I think what the system we're in now has not changed for at least several decades, right? Like there was evolution all the way up into the 50s, into the 60s. The shipping container comes on, and it was always about being more efficient. Now the shipping container is a nationalized or international system. Like there's an international agreement about the shipping container, just like there's international agreements about HTML or other protocols for the web, right? So international agreement on the shipping container sizes, international agreement on how they fit on ships, all these international agreements to create this international supply chain that then gets them to the shore. And then from there, how do they get back, right? Whether it's trains or trucks or whatever. But the problem is now, what's the next step of that? How does that evolve? Because it hasn't evolved for many decades. The biggest thing that's happened in the transportation world is Tesla electric trucks and the fact that trains are still relevant, but that you also have ships getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So now you have this giant ship with I don't know how many containers on it showing up at a shoreline, sitting there waiting to be offloaded. It's not an easy process. I mean, most of these ports have 6 cranes that they go in. By the way, if you want to watch something interesting, find one of the guys who's a crane operator who has a TikTok channel and watch his operation, because these guys are, and I bring up TikTok a lot, I know.
What's TikTok?
What
I don't
is it?
understand.
Yeah, TikTok, it's the clock. It's ticking away. And it does. Your time ticks away. That's why they call it TikTok. You're done 2 hours later, like, oh my God, I didn't get anything done. But it is it's a fascinating watching these guys and how precise they are and how good they are at the crane operation and what they do. But it's not fast, right? I mean, there's no way in the world that it's fast. So
I know, but other parts in the world have automated that and gotten rid of those guys altogether.
Mhm.
We like people, though, don't we? We don't automate everything, because then everybody's going to sit at home doing TikToks.
I don't know. I'm still waiting on my
And do
axle
podcasts,
shafts or my
right.
bearings or.
What's that?
Those guys get paid a grotesque amount of money too, by the way.
Yep.
And,
Right.
and they go on strike constantly.
Yeah.
Well, I found it fascinating that the movie War of the Worlds, Tom Cruise character was a crane operator. Like, of all things you could have your guy start out as, he was a crane operator. Yeah, had played nothing in the story except he lived crane operator and he had a really nice Mustang that he didn't get to use in the movie. Why couldn't he have fixed the Mustang instead of the minivan? I mean, come on.
So,
So much cooler.
so back to Jeeps.
Corey's job is always to keep me on track.
Come on, Corey.
Ay. Okay, so last year we talked a lot about electrification and electric vehicles and where we were headed and what a good idea. And I think the 4xe is an amazing product from FCA, from our beloved Jeep brand. I did pull up some actual numbers of sales rather than dollar amounts. Last year, the Gladiator number of units, 89,712, and 204,610 Wranglers. It was also the best recorded year, of course, for the 4xe because it's a new vehicle anyway. Now I'm going to throw this out there just because I know, I see the trend. We've talked about electrification a lot in the podcast over the last year. And I think that we can't ignore the fact that these manufacturers are getting rid of gas powered engines. I mean, whatever they end up doing with the 392, if that's going to remain, those kind of things. But here I just saw a report where California, they're saying, oh, by the way, don't plug your electric vehicles in because there's not enough power. That's right now. So I'm just going to throw out, I'm just going to throw it out there. Where do we think electrification is going to go?
Well, I'm looking forward to that little nuclear plant you can just put in the corner of your house, right? Just sure, why not? They can put the things on satellites. We just put them on our house, right?
Well, it's pretty simple. You can't fight the move towards electrification. It is going to happen. Is it the best? Absolutely not. Is it extremely inefficient? Well, sort of. I mean, look at a regular locomotive. It's diesel electric. It's a diesel engine to power electric engines so they can go down the track. That's kind of silly when you think about it. But then again, look at all the hybrids. Same idea. If it's purely electric and you have to reliably count on the grid being there, well, first off, you can't live in the sticks. If you're in an apartment, how many apartment complexes are going to have enough plug-ins for all of that? Any place with old infrastructure can't support the power needs. And like you said, when the winds come along and they turn off the power, what do? How about the people that were stuck for 18 hours in the freezing cold last night back east in their vehicles? Unfortunately, most of them had enough gas so they could turn on the heater. If they were pure electric and they went out, they'd be potentially dead. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter that the batteries may be ruining the environment by having to dispose of those. Doesn't matter about how they're trying to dig up half the world for those minerals. Doesn't matter. It's still going to come. What they need to look at, though, is hydrogen power, which is completely almost renewable. It's powerful. It works. It can be used to power internal combustion engines, which are not going to go away. In 20 years, we will still have internal combustion engines. Will it be like now? Will there be 392s? No, they'll probably all be these silly little four-cylinders with maybe a blower and electric bump up, but no, they're going to be around. That's my prediction. I'm sticking to it.
Well, hydrogen is producible, right? You can just have a little factory set aside that fills the size of this office and it can produce its own hydrogen. You could have even a smaller version to do it for your car. You can obviously have, there's a Sacramento has still had, for whatever reason, for years, this place has been there, and it's been almost 2 decades now, is a research facility that was a joint research facility between Toyota and a few other companies about hydrogen powered cars. And it was, for whatever reason, this was long before Tesla, long before electric became the thing. I agree. I mean, it's the byproduct of that is water, and drinkable water can come out of the tailpipe on a hydrogen car.
And we need drinkable water. Simple as that.
Sure, right. Just recycle it, circulate it.
SEMA was really interesting because I had a friend of mine that had his pickup there powered with his heavy engine that was completely hydrogen powered. And it's the new style. It's not the old style, but it has the super high pressurized tanks. So yeah, maybe that's a concern, but it shouldn't be. Everybody worries about hydrogen, and you're thinking, well, Didn't we have some dirigibles that blew up?
Yeah, everybody's thinking
100 years
Hindenburg.
ago? That was 100 years ago. Get over it. All right.
Right.
People are a little bit more on the ball now and can figure these things out.
Well, gas can blow up too. You do it wrong. So
It does all the time.
and we're happy enough to drive in gas-powered cars. But
You ever had a battery blow up?
Ow. Yeah, no.
Yeah. Sulfuric acid everywhere? Yeah.
Right.
Not good.
Yeah. Well, in lithium, like I said, lithium batteries. Now I'm surprised. I'd even be curious to see if in that, what is the temperature variant? I mean, a lithium battery can't even be operating that well in cold temperatures compared to say what it would be in. I mean, I know that with the Teslas and probably with the other cars too, they have systems that go through cooling systems to maintain temperature and all of that.
Yeah, they have to have these cooling systems. Yeah. When they break down, there goes that.
Yeah, exactly. But, so like, let's look at Crawl Magazine. Okay. We all Crawl Magazine and what your focus is over there. Are you even looking, have you done any articles on electric rigs, electric wheelers out there? What have you see from that standpoint?
I've actually got one on a storyboard for the next issue. Talking about the 4xe. I've been talking with people about their actual individual rigs. I think it would be pretty interesting to take an iconic trail like the Rubicon and actually run the whole thing without ever having an internal combustion engine start. I believe Stellantis just announced that, or recently, that the range was going to be extended from 20 miles all electric to about 30 all electric. And then you figure, okay, I don't know, a 2.5 or 4-to-1 transfer case is going to give you probably 10 or 15 miles, maybe, if you use it judiciously. That's interesting stuff. And it's a little peek into the future, which I think most of us, as much as we'd like to think that everything's going to stay the same, go back to the early mid 90s, and all of a sudden we had coil springs under a TJ. Oh my God.
Oh my gosh.
Right.
So, I mean, the change is coming. It's just a matter of how ready we'll be for it and whether or not the grid will support it. If you have a legitimate plug-in. I drive through Hawthorne, Nevada, which is a third of the way to Las Vegas from Reno. And there's, 6 or 8 Tesla charging stations there. And I'm thinking it's kind of a godforsaken place. And the thought of having to spend 90 minutes sitting there twiddling my thumbs while my car charges so I can drive to Tonopah and do the same thing again is, that's not exactly how I want to go down the road. So I don't see the ICE disappearing anytime soon. Even if it does just power a generator to keep my batteries charged so I can go down the road. So, but yeah, to answer your original question, yeah, it's something that we're definitely going to cover because it's not that that the future's here, and for wheelers, it's not that far away.
Because I haven't yet seen somebody with a 4xe actually like really do a build on it, and maybe I haven't seen it. I'm sure it's happened. But
Tony Carvalho at Bestop.
That
Yep. It was at SEMA this year or this last year, and I believe he's running Andrews tires. The first sets of
42s.
Yeah. 42s, yeah.
Tony told me he's planning on just pounding the living crap out of it. So,
nice.
I mean, if nothing else, he can be the guinea pig, and we'll all learn from him.
Well, I know that I knew he had a rig. I didn't realize that was a 4xe because he just reached out for a suspension for that.
The paint even glows on it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
It's electrically charged paint. That's controllable.
We've had a couple of them up on the CTI trailer, and it's always weird because I never can hear them coming. But it's a great idea, and the numbers and people that I've talked to that own them love them.
Mhm.
So again,
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people that are like, no, never. I'm not going to be that guy. I'm not a hybrid guy. Don't put me in a Leaf or something like that. But this isn't that anymore. This is technology moving forward. So,
Well, we
Absolutely.
saw
And I think that's the main thing to realize is that the 4xe is not the end all that Stellantis is going to do, or Jeep, whichever way you want to put it. It's just a start. And I think it's a good start. I've put considerable amount of time in them, seat time and off-road time, and I think they really show where it's going to go. Yes, the range has to be a lot better, of course, but that's what we've said about two-door Jeeps. Oh, we really should have 4 doors.
well, and there was
The
a couple
market
of
blew
them.
up, right?
Yeah.
There was a couple of them that even raced in the Rebel Rally, as I recall, and,
Oh, yeah.
and they did great.
Yeah,
Guess
absolutely.
We'll find out.
Well, we saw in 2021 the big release was that video that Jeep did about the future and what with the self-driving Jeep, right? And the campers out there camping and their Jeep going and meeting them after they hiked up a trail. This future vision they have of where Jeep's going to be, which we all know that's great if it's a nice soft trail, and even to the point of mileage, right? Like what is the actual mileage when it's going through the Rubicon versus mileage down a flat road, down a flat freeway, and how are you going to be in a position where your Jeep is going to be capable of handling some sort of trail and little obstacles and things like that occur if it's going to be quote unquote self-driving. And that's what anybody would expect. Like, sure, it's easy to make something, and Corey's been in the self-driving car that just goes down the freeway and handles the curves fine. And that was what, almost 10 years ago, 8 years ago, something like that.
A long time ago. Yeah.
And we know that Jeep has done some testing on the Rubicon with getting data to be able to do self-driving. But what do we actually see, and what is the technology challenges to do that? And is it just a fantasy, or is it really going to ever happen?
Oh, it's not a fantasy at all. It's entirely possible. It's doable. It's been done. The question I would have is why? I prefer to drive. I don't want to go on a hike and have my Jeep meet me at the other end.
Well, but then again, you are a Jeeper, but you're old school. You're not a millennial. Millennials want everything taken care of for them. So
maybe I hire someone to drive my Jeep around to the end of the trail and pick me up.
There you
I've
go.
done a hike. And yes, it seems to me, Corey, that's been done, especially like on Ultimate Adventure.
Mm-hmm.
At the times when I was pre-running, I'd be hiking the trail, and the guy would come around, and that was that.
Yeah.
nice.
So yeah, it's everything's possible.
Everything's possible. You can
Even
dream
the
big
new
and
Bronco is possible, and I did not expect that. Have any of you driven one?
So we had one here for about almost 3 months. That was a base model, and a local friend had gotten this base model in, dropped it off, and we did some R&D on it, and then we just picked up. In fact, Corey was here the week of the 16th. We picked up our Badlands Edition Sasquatch model. That's the company rig, which we originally ordered with a hard top, but we opted for a soft top to try to get it sooner. And that soft top sucks. That soft top is bad, terrible.
Wow.
I'm
The
not
wind
gonna-
blows. The wind blows against you, and it kind of lifts up, and wind goes through. So
No.
not good.
No.
The other day or so after the massive snowstorms, they said the soft top doesn't keep snow out of the inside.
No.
I saw that photo.
Yeah.
Nope.
So that's not. So don't take it down to Tierra del Sol or anything like that.
Can you imagine the dust storm in there?
Oh my God.
What a mess.
It's bad enough trying to clean up a Jeep, and that's when you had all your windows rolled up and the hardtop's still on, and it still gets dust inside.
Well, and the whole soft top, the whole aspect of it, of how you can't lift the back up. It kind of folds forward and it just crinkles the side windows. I got to tell you, here in Colorado with those frozen plastic windows, a couple of times of doing that, those windows are done. Yeah.
Yeah. So as soon as we can, we'll get an aftermarket hardtop for that. But it's a fun rig to drive. It absolutely is a fun rig to drive. I haven't taken it off road yet. I haven't wheeled it yet. So, and it's IFS. I mean, even Larry, when you're out there racing, you still had solid axle, right? You were committed to solid axle. And the IFS guys don't really crawl through stuff. They just kind of skip over it very high speeds.
Because they can.
But I think it's a fun rig to drive. There's a lot of things that are weird about it, like trying to replace control arms. In order to remove the lower control arm on the passenger side, you have to drop the fuel tank. Who wants to really do that, right? Am I going to put instructions? Drop your fuel tank to replace your control arm. So there's a lot of there's some things, but it's a Ford. It's popular. Ford stock, just because I happen to have some that I bought back when the market crashed years ago, has, for the first time ever, like that I can remember, it's above 20. It's like 24 as of yesterday, and it was hovering at like 10 to 14 for years. So there's a definite popularity for Ford to get this product out, and that may be good for them in the long run. But as far as a
Matson,
yeah,
sell.
Yeah, right. I'm a long-term hold. I buy. I'm not a trader. I buy. I hold. Gift it to my kids one day.
I think it's really going to be an issue as we see more and more of them in our club runs and these guys showing up with that Bronco, because it's really making spotters and other old school off-road guys. So it's going to be a little interesting, I think, as we see them out on the trails.
So one thing that we, if I remember correctly, 2015 or something, on Ultimate Adventure, we built a Ford just because they gave us a truck, but we put an Dana 60 up front with the independent front suspension. It was built by Randy Ellis, of course, and everything was incredible and super tough. And one thing we weren't going to break it. And I got it and I went, the problem here isn't the components, but it's learning how to drive again, because just like you say, the spotters can't tell what's going to happen. As a driver, you have to realize that it works differently. So even though you're trying to make that quick left, you may have to go right up and then left just to do the same thing, because all your floppy front end components are doing stuff totally different than a solid axle. So by the end of that trip, I was quite fluent in floppy axle driving. It's definitely a difference. But we never broke anything. So, we're talking about racing. Sure, remember Randy Ellis he had independent, strong stuff, and he did really well back in the day. There's a place for it. But like you say, what's going to happen are on your club runs, you're going to have these trail blockers called Broncos, because the front end's going to be hitting out tie rod ends, just like it happened with Hummers.
Yeah.
The original Hummers and then H3s, these itty bitty tie rod ends about that big. So off left. I mean, Jeeps only break sector shafts off steering boxes. We know how to fix that.
Well, yeah, and that's for you, Larry. I mean, have you driven one yet?
No, I haven't. I had a couple of them in my shop. The first few prototypes, they just needed a quick place to do some tweaking. But they wouldn't let me drive them. They said they were like $1 million cars or something. So, so I still.
And they didn't trust Larry McCrae. I mean, come on.
And Brad Lovell brought him there, so I thought he would vouch for me, but he didn't put in a good word for me, so I couldn't drive him. But
you
people
beat him on the track.
Ask me all the time, "Are you going to buy a couple for the tour business?" And the number one answer is for Zion Jeep Tours, so it'd be a little odd to have Broncos.
Hard to, They changed the name. Jeep and Bronco Tours.
We do own, and I bought the DBA, or bought the URL, but we do have a couple F-250s for our group tour, and we have a Ford Transit van, so we do have a couple of products that are Ford-based, but most people, when they come here, want a ride to Jeep.
What about you, John?
It's called the Jeep Tour.
What's that? Yeah.
There's a reason it's called the Jeep Tour.
Right.
And I'm
And
sure it
for
would
me,
work fine.
fortunately, I don't have to worry about them because it's gone Jeeping. It's all Jeep all the time. However, I still need to keep up on the greater things going on in the world. Politics, Broncos, whatever.
Well, and we're
chain
seeing that
problems.
with Quadratech. Just they announced their what is it? Not Steel Horses. What's the name of their brand? Something like that. They created a new brand specifically for their Bronco line. I heard Northridge 4x4 is going to do the same thing, but have a specific Bronco line since their brand is so well tied to Jeeps.
I think Milestar should have just a Jeep tire.
Covered.
What's it going to be called?
Yeah.
Jeep Tire by Milestar?
Jeep tire.
It'd be
Yeah,
the Jeep Star.
The
Yeah.
Jeeps. Oh, there you go.
See?
Jeep Star. Wait, I'm going to
Sounds
go
more like
secure
a
that
Jeep
URL
Turbo.
real quick. Jeepstar.com. Woo. What about you, John? Have you seen, or you have any plans for doing some stuff on the Bronco, or have you done anything on it yet?
I looked at one at EJS last year.
You looked at one.
That was the end.
That's it.
The closest I got was running over to the diner when I saw who was it? It was Brent and Healy were out there.
Yeah, Lauren was
with
there.
theirs, right? And I ran over there to try to talk to him a little bit, and the goal was to try to get one on the CTI. But that was the goal of EJS last year, and it didn't happen. They were very secure with these $1 million Jeeps that they had been allowed to drive. But it's good to have. It drives great. It's a good vehicle. It feels comfortable. I mean, there are certain things that are hard to do, like for instance the handle. Corey recognized this too. Is the handle is down, and it's kind of cool looking because it's at the dashboard. But if somebody actually needs to use a handle to get into the vehicle, it doesn't work because it's at the dashboard, and it's hard to leverage yourself up straight on versus pulling something off the roll cage. And I don't like the idea that when the top's off, that you have nothing. I just feel empty without this cross member out there. So I figure, somebody like Rock Hard is going to create a cross member bolt on back there, because not having that over your head, having that big open space may seem cool from marketing standpoint. I feel vulnerable.
There's obviously, it's Ford. There's it's just like the Raptor. There's some coolness factor about it. When we went and picked that one up in Sacramento, there's a lot of things that they did really well. I mean, that rear, the spare tire carrier, that whole solid back end, it's tight and it's strong. I mean, that tire is not going to move. But it's really, there's a whole lot of other things that are just the more you start to really look at it and you crawl around in it a little bit, you open the door and the window comes down. So it helps it, seal up. So when the door shuts,
Like
the
a Corvette.
window goes up inside the little rubber casement a little bit. But it's really annoying. You pull the rear door open and that window has to come down really fast as you open it up. And it just, I don't know. There's a lot of things that are just like, what is this? Why is that like that? And I don't know.
Sports car.
A lot of, I think there was a lot of, what am I trying to think of? Maybe the bells and whistles. I remember back in the days when I bought a boat, and the salesman said, well, this boat's got all the bells and whistles on it. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm on a boat. I don't need bells and whistles. I need a horn. Like, yeah.
Dick. So let's go down. Let's go around the table. So 2022, as we're heading into it, we've talked about general stuff, but what is your big takeaway this year? What's your big goal, Rick, for 2022?
My personal goal is to get my shop built. I've gone 25 years without a shop, working in the dirt. So I ordered a steel building. Smart, right? So
Right.
steel shot up, like you said.
Yeah.
So get that done, and I can actually finish some of my projects. As far as Gone-Gpn, it's more of what we do: cover events, go see people, maybe put on our own. Actually, have some projects. I've got a few things in the works. I got plenty of Jeeps outside that I can still work on all through the year. So that's what's going to happen on our end. As far as the world, it'll just keep going on the same as it ever was.
Mhm.
Speaks the old man in the group.
In it, in there. There'll be challenges, yeah. So there's always going to be challenges. And
Mhm.
at the end of the day, as they say, we'll work through it.
Right. Well said. How about you, Andrew? What's the big goals for 2022?
I think demand's going to remain strong for the industry, for all of us actually. And we've got 3 new product launches coming in just in light truck products. The next generation Patagonia MT is the MT02. Then we've got the AT Pro, as well as the XT finally launched. John got a prototype set. Gosh, it was probably close to 18 months ago, John. I think that was Off-Road Expo of 2020 that you had those. We're finally fully re-engaged in product development, and we've got a lot of exciting stuff coming. So a lot of stuff in the works, but our outlook is very, very positive for 2022.
Excellent. Good to know. How about you, Larry? What do you see 2022?
Unfortunately, I think it's going to be more of the same as far as COVID. I don't see COVID being a non-issue for a while. After the first couple of weeks, I thought, okay, it's going to probably last a little summer till it warms up and this thing's gone away, and it didn't go away. And then of course fall came, and then winter came, and I just feel like every year it's going to be a thing. It's going to continue to divide people. I'm in that minority that hasn't had a vaccine yet, and there's places where I can't go because I've made that decision, and it has really limited our plans. I probably won't travel internationally again until maybe not even domestically if they require a vaccine on the on an airplane. So for me, it's how do we survive another year? Our company is a federal contractor, and all of our permits that renewed just this last month, we had to not only attach our COVID plan, but we had to put vaccine records for all of our guides. And fortunately, and not all of our guides are vaccinated. So, we had to make a decision of whether or not we were going to continue to do. It was just a national park. For some reason, BLM has not made us do that. But the law was challenged and it was overturned, and now all of our permits they've eliminated the vaccine requirements, so we get another year of operating at least. But for us, that's the COVID has changed our business more than anything we've done since we bought the business, and mostly positively, but definitely there are some negative impacts, and I just don't know how this summer is going to look compared to the last 2 summers without international travel and maybe a slowdown in domestic travel. So I'm optimistic, but I feel like it's going to really change this summer for us.
Well, the whole COVID, it's changed people's businesses, but it's also changed people's lives, right? Like we're dealing with that here in California because of mandates for, the only state in the union that's mandating kids to get vaccinated, right? I have a 5-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old. So, but that's that same thing. It's like, oh, great, we're doing great in California. The business is doing well. We're happy, but it may, it's like children first, right? So you make the impact of the business has been great. The impact to lives has been terrible.
Right.
John, how about you? What do you see your big game goals and accomplishments that are coming up for 2022 predictions?
In my world, the paper industry is really volatile right now, and so I'm trying to hold off on any increases in pricing. I haven't changed pricing on subscriptions or newsstand offerings in 15 years, and we've had probably 20% increases in just over the last year and a half. So that's one thing internally that that I'm dealing with, and then otherwise it's just getting back out on the road. This spring of 21, we spent 3 months with a southeast to New England tour, about 7,500 miles, 23 states, and the goal is to do that twice in 2022. We've got a Arizona Utah thing in March and April, and then I want to hit the southeast again in the fall. But that's we know that we have to see our people where they are.
John, we have a little bit of audio issue with you.
With who? With me?
Yeah, with
No,
you.
you're
Go
good
ahead,
now.
you're good now. Keep talking. But for some reason, you were just disappearing.
But
I'll edit that out. I'll make you sound good.
The big deal for us is just to get out, and I've had to cancel events and large events in Texas 2 years in a row because of insurance issues. I couldn't get it because A, it was in Texas, and B, it was a super spreader event to happen. So, we just want to get back and reconnect with these people that we've missed for, basically the last 2 years.
Well, that's the big thing, is reconnection. I mean, Easter Jeep Safari's coming up. I think we're all planning on being there. And I just got notification just 2 days ago because last year TDS got canceled and it basically was a parking lot event. And I just got the notification 2 days ago that TDS is canceled again this year, or at least the idea of it's a parking lot event again because of COVID.
Wow.
So actually last year we didn't go out there. This year I might actually go out there just to go out because the people are still out there. It's just they couldn't do an organized event. So they have a vendor booth where people can put little tables out and stuff like that, and this whole big thing out in the big parking lot by the Jack in the Box. But they're not, and they wanted us to come out and bring the CTI trailer to that area. So we might do that this year, but the idea, the big, so other events, who knows what's going to happen across the country. Obviously there's events we know will happen. The ones that happened last year should happen again this year. EJS seems to be fine, although even then it'll be interesting to see at EJS because you have the standard vendor show, and then that same vendor show, the group that put on the vendor show last year out there by Dixie seems to be they have something else planned. I don't know what the plan is. It's going to be the same location, but they're planning on doing a vendor show again.
Well, and with Dixie gone now out there, that'll be interesting.
Yeah.
What was that, Larry?
I saw them advertising for that event, but I assumed that meant that the Red Rock Club wasn't doing a vendor show, but that's not the case.
No, I filled in paperwork. I reserved my space at Red Rock, so I'm assuming that it's going to be. We don't need to be involved in both of those because from our standpoint, when Corey does on the side of the road down there with the CTI trailer and that whole B area, that's plenty of visibility for us. But we still support Red Rock and we still support them and do what we can to help them. But yeah, so apparently these are both going to happen that week.
I'm sure Red Rock's excited about that.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah, Corey, did you say that Dixie's gone down there?
Yeah.
Dixie closed out. They closed that store. And what I understand is that, and this is just pure rumor because I haven't talked to anybody. I understand is that they got a really good offer on the building, and because they own the building, they got a really good offer on the building, and they said sure. And they didn't really need that space. It wasn't it wasn't their primary location, obviously. So, but yeah, they closed their store.
Yeah, they're still in St. George. So
yeah, which is that great location. I love that building, especially the CTI posts that come out of the ground, the lifts out of the ground. You need to show up there, Corey, for a CTI tour. Just use their lifts, like not even
right.
Like we're gonna do a CTI tour. Just okay, pull up here.
It's very interesting to me, and Larry brought this up, and we haven't really chatted about it, and the effect of COVID, how it has affected us in all such different ways. And something like a permit, we don't even think anything about that. But Larry's exactly right, and we had to go through the same thing. We pulled permits for Death Valley, and the initial response was commercial use. They just basically said not until after December 8th, when they were going to get some more direction, from literally the Department of Interior and the National Park Service higher ups. And it was kind of interesting that, all of a sudden, even for us, they view us as a federal employee when we go into their lands operating on with a commercial use permit. So we did the same thing. We kind of went, oh, we may not go to Death Valley if they're going to want us to all be vaccinated. And how would we even do that? But it was very interesting on December 9th then when they released a statement and basically said, we're not going to uphold the executive order. We're actually just not going to, we're going to pretend that nothing has changed. We're not going to enforce it. You're on your own. Took the COVID addendums off the permit, all of that. And it was we were like, wow, that's kind of crazy and kind of cool.
I've even heard threats of having, like at the border station or check where you're going from Nevada into California, that there might be vaccine checks there to drive into the state.
At least they would finally use those people for something purposeful.
Right.
I mean, come on. I mean, the number of times I drive through, do you have any fruits, vegetables? No, absolutely not, sir. As I drive through with my RV full of fruits and vegetables, right?
I'm eating an apple in my RV as I'm driving through, and no, sir. All right, come on in.
Now our fans have heard me say this, and I love this, but driving from Texas into New Mexico, you go through a stop. Have any of you guys done that?
Yep.
What's the thing they ask you there? When I went through New Mexico to Texas with my RV, the question was, is everybody in the RV an American citizen?
I think I've heard that a few times going through.
Yeah. That's the, well, at least they're using it for a different purpose.
They've asked
in
me
California,
in the
it's all
past,
about the fruit fly.
They've asked me in the past whether or not everybody in the vehicle was there on their own accord, and whether or not anybody was under duress.
Were you in a
kidnapper van?
I was going to say, were you in a van without windows, or?
Yeah, it's just
talk about something. Pewe, talk about something that should be automated. just a scam.
All right, so I came across from Arizona to California once, same station, middle of nowhere. It was a Jeep, towing a little Jeep trailer, enclosed. And he says, "What's in the trailer?" And I go, "Nothing," because honestly, it was empty. And he says, "Got any aluminum cans or bottles in there?" I go, "Why the hell would I have aluminum cans or bottles in there?" Because people smuggle them back in, which is illegal, to California to recycle them.
Yeah.
No,
isn't it like a Seinfeld episode where you take this stuff across the border and get more for it or something?
Well, there's no CRV in Arizona, so you're not paying that 5 cents when you take it to California. They're not really paying you by the weight; they're paying you by the weight based on the CRV. So
right,
it's a whole business.
Apparently, people do it.
It must be a big business. Yeah, especially there's no CRV in Oregon. It's a 5 cent difference. So I think it's like 5 cents in Oregon, and you bring it down to California, and it's 10 cents now. So it's we've done that. We've thrown our cans and bottles from our Oregon house into the car and brought it down. My wife loves doing it with the kids.
Edit that out.
Yeah.
Well,
charge you for it already.
I've seen nothing. They don't ask me about it at the border, so they're asking about fruits and vegetables.
Well, the one positive is that Rick shown me there's a life after the magazine world.
Oh, yeah. And I don't have to worry about paper costs.
Right.
That's one nice thing. But thank you for continuing to do a actual printed paper magazine. Thank you.
Yep.
Yes, in fact, I got it right. I'm pointing right there. There's a stack right behind me for all magazine there, sitting on the top.
There you go.
Underneath my Jeep American flag.
And John, for whatever it's worth, I wouldn't be afraid of a price increase. Your publication is high quality and fewer and farther between. So I'm sure they will gladly pay an extra $1 an issue.
Hey, as the consumer, I'm saying charge the vendors, John. Raise your edges.
I was about to say, John, lower the vendor prices, increase the quantity, and raise the prices on the consumer. You walk over to you walk by at the supermarket and you see the magazine stands that are right there by the cash register. And there's these magazines like Maker magazines, $35 for a quarterly publication. Hey, holy crap! You're in the wrong business, John. You need to
Oh,
build
man,
these
you're-
quarterly publications that you're charging like $55 quarterly pub.
No, I need to do like a $95 annual.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah, and then
Yeah,
take
people
about
buy it.
11 months off.
Yeah, there you go.
Awesome.
And we go and 12 pages of that. We'll put the Modern Jeeper calendar
Let's make it
inside of
thick.
there.
There you go.
Well, I will tell you this. It just occurs to me if anybody wants to go to crawlmag.com and use Modern Jeeper as a promo code, I'll give them 20% off.
Wow, that's awesome.
So
That's awesome.
Very
John.
cool.
Well, now I'm
Half
gonna be
your
like, so
rates
now we're
price.
gonna get that out there to a lot of people to be able to do that. So John doesn't think that we only had like 5 listeners.
well,
Yeah, I put this promo code out on Modern Jeeper Show, and you got like nothing.
well, hang on. My email's beeping, and it looks like Corey's just ordered 4 subscriptions.
Yeah, I'm on it. I'm on it.
We'll hire one of those Chinese, companies
Bots.
that just do the bots. Yeah.
Oh, God.
Well, guys, it's wonderful. By the way, I want to, before we wrap up here, one of my guys, Mike Upchurch, I talked to him about him earlier, said about 20 years ago, somebody gave him this coin. And it's a coin about Ernest Shackleton, right? And everybody knows the story of Ernest Shackleton, the guy who
Shackleton.
went down to South America, and saved his people. Nobody died, even though the ship had to be abandoned. But what I thought was interesting, I'm going to put on my big horn rim glasses here that everybody hasn't seen yet. So,
Okay, Harry.
Harry
thanks.
Potter.
Is on this coin is the ad that he placed to get his crew. And it says, "Man wanted for hazardous journey, small wages, bitter cold, long months of complete darkness, constant danger, safe return doubted, honor and recognition in case of success. Ernest Shackleton." There was a time when men were men, and we were living in a world. And he had a full crew based on that ad. I think we're living in a world where we need this again. We need this again, right?
Certainly,
we
yes.
need real people to understand what real sacrifice is and what real men are, and what it means to get up every day to do an honest day's work, and to be able to go and then take that money and buy Milestar tires, go on tours, buy Crawl magazine, check things out over at Gone-Gpn, and of course buy Metalcloak products. So, but we need that again. Thank you all for being a part of this incredible podcast. Love having you guys again. I hope that sometime this year we actually see each other in person, because that would also require me getting out of my seat and actually going on events. You have a greater chance of seeing Corey out there than you do me. But I really appreciate all of you being a part of the show.
It's our pleasure.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you for inviting us.
Corey, anything you'd like to wrap up with, my friend?
No, what a great group. And again, like Matson said, Jessy and I hope to see you guys somewhere in between. I mean, we'll be in St. George next week. We've got the Winter 4x4 Jamboree. We've got an open house at American Off-Road in Vegas after that. Then we've got Death Valley trip. We've got we've got a lot of stuff going on. And again, for the folks that are afraid and they're sitting at home, if you're afraid, stay home. But if you're not, there's nothing stopping you. Get out and go enjoy what we all enjoy doing. I think there's too many people that are living in fear and watching the media and not doing what they should be.
Well said, Corey. Well said. All right, for all of our Modern Jeepers out there, thank you again for joining us in this amazing episode. 2022 is going to be full of all kinds of great stuff. We have people that we were supposed to get in 2021 and we didn't, so we'll get them out there in 2022. But check us out at ModernJeeper.com. Check us out at ModernJeeperAdventures.com. Sign up for Moab trip is live. Death Valley trip is live. And of course, youtube.com/ModernJeeper. Make sure you subscribe. And if you're listening to this on podcast, please go out there and like, subscribe, 5-star it, give us a good review. And please go to each one of our guests and support them, because these are all great guys and truly the salt of the earth. Appreciate it. Take advantage of that Crawl magazine offer. And then go over to Larry and say, "Hey, I heard about you on Modern Jeeper," and call up Andrew and go, "Hey, I heard about you on Modern Jeeper.
Looking for some tires."
Where's my 42s?
All right, my friends. Well, for all of us Modern Jeepers, we will see you on the trails.
Cheers, guys.
All right.
See ya.
Thanks.
See you. Thanks.